Howdy folks, Brian Cusco here at Triple B, and today we've got Vin Russo back on the channel. Vin is always a welcome and happy addition here on Triple B TV, become one of our staples, and we're always happy to have him back. He's got a different species than he's talked about on pretty much every other Triple BT video we've ever had him on, so you can look forward to that, and won't waste any more of your time. You're watching Triple B TV. You've become a staple now, Vin. I mean, you were always a staple in the hearts of the people. And
you mean a staple on the show?
On this show, yeah. You won't let me come to a show and not do it with you anymore. So.
Well, I also noticed that you get some good views when you do one with me.
That's very true. I would be lying if I didn't notice that either.
I'm not saying it's just only me, it's both of us. You know, we're creating a cool show and maybe people want to watch it, and so why wouldn't I want to get free advertising?
Well, I'm going to say that it's more you than me. How about that?
Yeah, but you just saw when we were walking through the crowd.
Yeah, I know.
You're famous. More than me. Nobody said, "Hi, Vin Russo." They all said, "It's Brian Cusco."
This guy was like, make way, Brian Cusco's coming through. I was like, dude, I'm going
The little kids will look at me like, what's wrong with this guy?
I was behind you thinking the same thing.
That's funny.
So this is the first thing that caught my eye when I walked up to your table this morning. So what's going on here?
That's the rare and elusive Miami tricolor tree boa.
Miami.
No, it's just a toy. I had that on my table, and about 50 people walked by and were like, wow, what is that? I'm like, it's a toy.
Well, you know what you got to do now. You got to make that snake.
Right, now I got to duplicate this. Yeah, who knows how. It's just a little toy. But it does look real. It's pretty cool.
It does. Yeah. I mean, for a second, there was that moment, that first moment I saw it, I was like, and then I got closer, and I was like, okay, it's a toy, but...
Don't get me wrong, it happened to me the first time I saw one.
Is that why you have them now?
That's why I got it, yeah. And I even found out the company that made them, and I started buying them and selling them at shows. It's like, that fooled me, you know, so it's pretty cool. It looks like I guess it's supposed to be a little Burmese python, you know?
Yeah, I can see that.
Little albino Burmese python.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
So where do we get them? Oh, we have to come by your booth at Tinley.
You can come by my booth and I'll sell you one, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for what you're going to... Well, first, before we get into the snakes you got on the table,
okay.
What's new with you?
What's new with me? Well, obviously I do this for a living, so it's every day, you know. As far as what's new, there's new stuff popping out all the time, so...
Snake-wise, yeah.
Snake-wise, I brought a couple of new things that they're not really new to me because I've been working with them for 20 years or more, but they're new to the industry because a lot of people aren't used to seeing captive bred and born things of this variety. You know, a lot of people are used to all the wild-caught stuff coming in, and years ago I would get into things and breed them and then forget about them for a while, then get back. You know, like one set of these I gave to a friend for a long time, and he got out of snakes completely and gave them back, and I even forgot I had them. I'm like, oh, I forgot I even had these. So once we get to those, we can talk about that being new. But as far as new, doing it every day to make a living, you know.
How long has it been full-time for you? I don't remember.
I incorporated in 96, and I quit my day job in 2001. So 21 years full-time. Prior to that, my brother and I started a pet store in 1987. It was called Exotic Specialties. That was in 87 in Farmingdale, Long Island. And from there, we started doing wholesaling. And I was always breeding snakes. And I remember telling my brother back then, I'm like, we should breed snakes and not buy and sell these wild-caught things that want to kill us. You know, they're always biting us. Because you even get a bag of tokay geckos. You put your hand in there, they all got you, you know. So I I saw a need for the captive bred stuff, because when you captive bred your animals and had perfect little babies hatch out, they were worth so much more than a wild caught animal. You know, they were precious. And I saw, a need, like a niche product, so to speak, a need for it. So that was in the 80s, and now here we are today. I'm doing it full time. Yeah, over 20 years, 35 years just doing it as a business.
So with these species here, how many years have you been producing captive born on these two? Is this a newer thing for you, or have you been?
It's not a newer thing. I've been breeding these for over 20 years.
And producing, so you've been producing
babies,
born.
yeah.
Okay.
But they weren't popular in the reptile world because there were still wild-caught ones coming in. See, the problem with wild-caught stuff is it degrades the value because the wild ones are so cheap. They just pick them up off the ground, they bring them, send them, ship them to countries. And I'm not knocking wild-caught stuff because a lot of my stuff started from wild-caught stuff. I wouldn't be doing what I do today if it wasn't for wild-caught boas, which is what I started with 30 years ago. But we're at the point in the business now that you need to define wild animal, especially with legislation. They want to use the words wild animals. But if we've got animals that have been in captivity for 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 generations, to me that's a domesticated animal. It's a little different. They are far more used to captive environment. They didn't live in the wild, so they don't know what the wild is. They're hardier, they eat better, they lived under our conditions that we've created for them. As far as how long have I been doing these and the wild caught part of it, when they were wild caught and I couldn't sell the captive ones for more than the wild caught ones were, I kind of just stopped breeding them for a little while. But I kept a little group of them, to keep them going. And then as time went on, for example, the viper boas, we'll talk about them first, I guess.
Sure.
The viper boas stopped coming out of the wild for a while in big numbers. When I was younger, back in the, 90s, late 80s, early 90s, these were like $25 out of the wild.
Oh, faster than you think.
Yeah, they are. They were inexpensive creatures, so they became pet store staples, and people couldn't keep them alive because they were keeping them too dry. I figured out that they like water. They have keeled scales, so I keep them, I'm not going to say semi-aquatic, but I definitely keep them moist. And I figured out how to breed them, not even by accident, just by keeping some together and seeing what they did. So I'm at the point now where I'm at 3 generations. This is the 3rd generation that I've bred in captivity. So the Latin name is Candoya aspera. They call them an asp. They look like a viper, so the viper boa. But they're pretty rare. Not too many people are breeding them in captivity. But now there's a need for them because they're not coming out of the wild in the numbers that they were coming out of the wild.
And these tend to get quite red as they become. Wow, that was really cool movement. We want to put them down one more time. I'd love to catch that locomotion with this angle. Oh, yeah. That's super cool. Did you see that motion? It was almost like a forward-moving sidewinder. Maybe it's just because he can't get any traction on the table.
Yeah, he can't get traction. We'll put him back in the cup so he feels more comfortable. So now that they're not coming out in droves, there's a value to them, and so I'll start breeding them again and making more of them, trying to get them available to the public. They'll be a little more expensive, but they're not.
Now, the viper boas I've seen, mostly I've seen adults. Do they tend to develop a bit of red into adulthood?
Well, they're highly variable. Some are red, some are brown, some are black, some are yellow.
Kind of like the other Candoya.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're highly variable. And when you breed them, you don't get one color. You get a mix of colors.
It's not like a line bred thing. They're just so variable.
No,
it's all over the place.
It's just like eastern hognose snakes. Where I live in New York, eastern hognose snakes can be yellow and black, jet black, brown and black, red and black. They could be all different colors, and when those breed, they are all different colors too. So it's just a evolutionary ability to blend in. Same with tree boa babies. You see every color in the spectrum in those the garden tree boas, they call them. Not the green tree boas, the garden tree boas, the regular tree boas. They're all different colors. They're similar. I mean, these are a boa too, but they're all different colors.
So different than most other boa species that you see, especially with those keeled scales. Like, how many boa species have keeled scales?
Just these and the round island boa, which is off the coast of Madagascar. That's a pretty rare snake. I've never seen one in captivity. But yeah, they have keeled scales. They're very rough. They have a rough appearance.
And when you were talking about captive hatched and the different terminology, you know, and like you said, with the legislation we're facing, part of me was wondering as you were talking about that, like, if a change in terminology, a change in terminology would be a big help, you know, as far as like going from calling things captive hatched. If you just think about the commonly domesticated animals that we have, you know,
right.
That terminology has been dropped, whether or not it ever existed with dogs, or you don't say, I've got a captive bred dog, you know.
Right. And
I don't know how long it would take, or
how many generations
to where you're just saying, oh yeah, I've got a dog from this. Well,
that's one of the things that I do whenever I'm speaking to legislators who want to pass bills. I always ask them to define wild caught, because a lot of times they use that terminology, wild animal. So I'm like, all right, define wild animal. If I have a snake that's 7 generations in captivity, is that a wild animal? We're at the point now where we are domesticating reptiles. We really are.
Yeah.
You just look around a show like this and look at some of the ball python, look at some of the boas, look at some of the geckos. They look nothing like what was found in the wild a few generations ago, not even that far back. You can alter them very quickly. And that's what we're doing in captivity. The dogs and cats were altered very quickly. Cattle, chickens, changed very quickly through captive, selective breeding.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing too with reptiles. Certain reptiles that this is the wild type, we're not going to change this much. Maybe we'll pick out some red ones and orange ones and try to breed them to each other and make more, but other than that, some things just are always going to look the way they do in the wild. But I think it's the number of generations in captivity that make them domesticated. And for example, these are so much hardier than the ones you get in the wild. The ones you get from the wild, they're used to living in a swamp somewhere, and all of a sudden you're drying them out, keeping them in a fish tank, and they're breathing dry air. They can't handle it because they've lived their life in a different environment, and now you're changing it. But if they're born in captivity in an environment that's conducive to their health, and you figure out what does well for them, then they'll continue to reproduce and make more generations, and it keeps going.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Just a cool little project that I'm doing, and I dig them. There's just something different about them.
Yeah, they're pretty wild. And then when you can get one to tame out and just kind of chill with you,
you got to handle them. You know, they're a little nippy at first, but if you keep doing this with them, they're pretty calm. It's just like anything else.
Right.
You know, get a dog that's unsocialized and it's nuts, but get a puppy and bring it with you to work every day and bring it to the park every day. That's going to be the best pet you ever had.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter what breed it is.
Yeah. Our friend Michelle was on earlier, and Michelle, Moshballs.
Yes.
She has a lot of snakes. Her ball pythons she works with a lot, and I have other breeders that don't work with their ball pythons nearly as much as she does, and it's just a night and day difference. You just have the animal on the table, like
right.
Night and day.
And even when you and I did, we did that like Skype thing after the last video. What would you call it? It wasn't a Zoom call. Yeah. She's sitting there with a boa in her hands, because she's watching TV with a snake.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be the best socialized pet, because you get home from work and you pick it up and you walk around the house with it, or you watch TV for an hour with it. It's getting used to human interaction. It's not just sitting in the corner. And that's where this reptile business is going, believe it or not. It's not breeding. Breeding is like one aspect. It's the consumer who's buying the pet. Think about dog breeders. There's not a lot of dog breeders. There's a lot. Well, there may be a lot of dog breeders, but how many dog breeders do you know? But how many people do you know own a dog?
Yeah,
right.
That's 1 to hundreds.
Right. So it's like, I think that's where this business is going. There's going to be people that breed certain things, and there's going to be a lot more collectors. Like, oh, I want to collect viper boas. They're cool. Or I'm going to have one viper boa, one ground boa, the Paulsoni, and one Candoya tree boa, the Bibernai, you know? Just because I think they're cool, being a consumer. So that's where this is going. Same with leopard geckos, ball pythons, boas, pythons. It doesn't matter.
It's a good place to go to, I think.
Yeah, and that's where we got to start as far as dealing with legislation. They have to understand that this is domestication of wild animals. Now, this is another project I've been working on. This is Russian sand boas.
I don't know that I've ever seen these. I mean,
They're pretty rare.
You see Kenyans fairly often. And you see, I guess, Indian sand boas, right?
Yeah, Indian, Kenyan, mostly African. These come from Uzbekistan, and the range they come from is on the Black Sea. In the wild, they range from gray, brown, to jet black. So they're similar to the viper boas in that they're polymorphic, I guess we'd call it. They vary greatly, and people like the jet black ones like this. There was a guy in the late 80s, early 90s named Lloyd Lemke who used to bring in stuff from that part of the world. And I remember a bunch of these coming in, and I had gotten some. And a few other people got them too. And I gave a few pairs to a friend's brother and another friend, and I kind of forgot about them for a while because I couldn't give them away. I'd go to shows and nobody really wanted them. This was 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And then my one friend about 10 years ago said to me, "Oh, Vin, I still got some of those black Russian sand boas. You want them?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll take them back." And I bred them, and they produced an albino, which is like weird. And then I went online and found that 2 or 3 other guys produced them too. And they all go back to this one guy, Lloyd Lemke, and then there's a few other guys in between that like bred them and then dispersed them. So I'm not throwing names out, but it's cool how they've been in captivity so long, and now almost more than 20 years later, little recessive genes are
just popping up. Like there was no original wild caught.
Right, there was no
phenotype?
visual albino, exactly. So one of the original wild caught ones, or 2, who knows? They could have all been from the same litter, who knows? Popped out an albino. Well, had the albino gene, and now we popped out an albino. So
obviously not these snakes right here.
No, these are the black variety. But this is another cool project. They're easy to get started. They eat pinkies. There's a cool method to get them to eat well, and people used to do it with gray-banded king snakes that didn't eat after they hatch. They'd put them into hibernation, and that's what I do with these. Since they come from Uzbekistan, it's pretty cold there.
Straight from being born to hibernation?
Yes, I put them in the refrigerator at 55 degrees for 6 weeks. So they're born late June. I put them in the refrigerator July and half of August, take them out, set them up, and since they're sand boas, I don't keep them very dry either. I give them a moist spot, and they eat live pinkies right away, all of them. I've had no issues, so it's a great little project. It's something fun, and the jet black snakes are cool. People dig them. Sand boas are real popular now. Again, 10 years ago, they weren't popular. Now they really are.
They're definitely cool snakes. Look at that. They're super chill, too.
Yeah, they're really calm.
Hanging out, just checking things out. Little eyes getting moved close to the top of their head.
Yeah, they got tiny little eyes. And they don't get really big. I mean, a big one is maybe 2 feet.
That sounds huge.
Yeah.
Considering this one right here, these are like, what, 5 inches?
Yeah, and they're double what they were when they were born.
Wow.
Yeah, they're 6 months old.
Oh, yes. Oh, we're getting a little movement. Oh, yeah, make it. Let's get that locomotion. It's funny. This is the thing that terrifies a lot of people about snakes, is just this motion right here.
Right. Yeah, people see it on the ground and they're trying to get their feet off the ground.
But I look at it, and obviously we look at it, it's like, how cool.
Yeah. Nice. But this is what keeps me going, my little projects that I work on the side. Obviously, I breed boas for a living, and these are boas too, but they're not the common boa constrictor. They're a whole different genus.
Yeah.
So this is what gets my feet on the floor in the morning, going to work, seeing what's born, what I've got. And it's these little projects that just keep you sane, I guess.
It's fantastic. I appreciate you always coming over, man.
I look forward to it, man.
Yeah, it's always a good time when you come sit down at the table. And
Yeah.
I've not forgot about the idea of, if you ever have any plans whatsoever to head back to South America, like I told you, I want to be on the
I'm going to need a
ticket.
camera crew.
I know, and I told you, I'll be that camera crew.
By talking about it, we might have to do it now.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, I know. That's why I planted this. Yeah, you're right. We should do something. We got to come up with a plan and a time period. And I think a good expedition would be maybe to some islands for island dwarf boa constrictor, boa imperator, I should say. Maybe something like that. I'll talk to some of the PhDs I know who have been working on that stuff, and maybe one will go with us, and we'll go look for some and document it and do some good video work with it. Yeah.
That would be fantastic, man.
Yeah, you got a lot of fancy cameras, so we should be good.
Yeah. I'll bring a drone. I'll bring a couple. We'll get some beautiful shots.
Drone, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if we're on an island and you got a drone on the top, because those islands are so small.
Yeah.
Some of them are just a few acres. I mean, a drone can film the whole island.
Yes.
And us digging through walking through the mangrove swamps.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll have to come up with something.
I'm gonna keep bugging you about it.
All right. That's a good idea. Yeah. Now that I've got some more time.
Thank you, Vin.
No problem, man. Anytime, man.
Appreciate you. Thank you again to Vin for coming on. You guys can always go check out what he's up to if you don't know already, and there's a link down in the description where you can do just that. And also, if you'd like to do a little Q&A with Vin tonight, we're going to have a Zoom call as we do with all of our Triple B TV guests, and there's a link down in the description for that as well. If you'd like to come join us, we'd love to see you there. And I'm going to keep bugging Vin for real about this South America trip and go check out some boas down there. It sounds like a blast. What do you guys think? Leave a comment down below if you'd like to see that trip documented. I know I would love to go and document it. English. But if we don't see you tonight on the Zoom call, then we hope to see you next week here on Triple B TV. And until then, y'all take care. Oh! What am I doing?
Why?
We'll do another Zoom call once this goes up, probably about a month or so. I'll give you a good heads up. Thanks again. I appreciate it.